This is a U.S.-China media brief produced by the UCLA Asian American Studies Center. The U.S.-China media brief features interviews with experts and other prominent individuals involved in studying and documenting the dynamic and ever-evolving relationship between the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. I'm Russell Leong, Director of the U.S.-China Media Brief of the UCLA Asian American Studies Center. Our purpose is to provide a more balanced view of U.S.-China relations for the U.S. media through our media brief and website.
Getting back to media, though, of course, movie making and media have a lot to do with globalization, and two recent films come to mind. One is Kung Fu Panda, which is a American-produced film, and the Chinese response was that, gee, you know, Kung Fu and this type of Kung Fu fighting is part of this Chinese culture. Why didn't we make this movie in Shanghai? Why did the Americans make it? And the other movie, which I want to mention, of course, is the Slumdog Millionaire,
right,
which is sort of put forth as an example of sort of transnational filmmaking with sort of global venture capital, kind of lower paid, I think, Indian talent, including the music, the actors, and so forth.
Right.
But you know, these are kind of two examples of you know, kind of transnational filmmaking. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the article mentioned something that I wasn't aware of, and that is the argument that the success of Slumdog, you know, raised a certain amount of anxiety, so to speak, in China, and that there were questions being asked to, well, why can't something like this be done in China? Could there be a co-production, for example, between China and the U.S.? So, you know, some kind of envy, if I may put it this way. And I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I'm aware of the reaction to Slumdog in many countries, including India, but certainly not in China. I wasn't aware of that. And I think that Slumdog is in some ways the wave of the future, because I think that we will see more enhanced production between two different co-productions between two different countries. And I think that, yes, here the fact that there is a certain facility in English and so on in India is certainly going to ease the possibilities of co-production. They were speaking about these kinds of productions, you know, crossover from Bollywood to Hollywood and from Hollywood to Bollywood, including a crossover of some stars or 2-3 years ago, and I think that we're going to see this more frequently in the years to come. But I think that Slumdog, you know, that one would have to look at some of the kinds of things that you had mentioned. One would have to look at, for example, labor costs, how the studio production, you know, system works, whether it could be done in China or not. I really couldn't say, partly because I don't know enough about the studio system and how how film production companies really work in China. But in India it could happen partly because extras, for example, are paid at a astronomically low rate. If the stars of Indian cinema are paid at astronomically high rates, it's the very opposite for the extras, you know, right? Well, the whole Olympics opening ceremony that the Chinese put on, which was seen throughout the world, was really directed by a Chinese filmmaker, and it actually looked like one of his films.
Yes.
And people always ask, well, how did the Chinese perform so successfully, get so many people? A lot of the performers, or the so-called extras, were, I think, Chinese soldiers from the PLA.
Yeah.
So, you know, it actually did have a connection with the government, with the state, of course, you know.
Right.
So that's a little different.
Right.
I mean, I don't know whether there would ever be a film called Beijing Billionaire, you know, and that's taking place in some of the hutongs or in the sort of more slums, and suddenly, you know, they're on this whatever, win a lot of money. I think that would raise a lot of questions about about the individual, about making money, becoming a billionaire, or what happens to the money, etc. I think it's you know, I think the Chinese still see media and movie making as very political and as part of you know, something which does need to be controlled.
Yes. Yeah. Well, apropos my remarks about the print media, you know, I was talking about the multiplicity of languages and so on. I should also point out that, you know, that the word Bollywood that is used here, which I won't get into the very precise
history of that usage and when it started and so on at the present moment. But what I did wish to say was that Bollywood here stands in for all of Indian cinema. And in fact, I think the overwhelming impression is that Indian cinema does mean Hindi language cinema, which is in fact entirely erroneous, because the films made in the four predominant languages of South India, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada, together films made in these four languages outnumber the films made in Hindi, right? And it's not simply a matter of numbers here, but I have been interested in the Indian diaspora as a global phenomenon for many years now. And one of the numerous countries that I've spent some time in connection with my interest here is Malaysia, which has a significant population of Indians. About 8% of the population of Malaysia is of Indian origin. Now these Indians are largely, not entirely, of Tamil origin. So if you go to Kuala Lumpur and you go to a cinema that's screening an Indian film, it's not a Hindi language film usually, it's a Tamil language film. Right? And this is true of actually lots of countries in the Indian diaspora. So there are several Indian cinemas that have now become globalized, if I may put it this way. I mean, we might want to use here, especially in the West, one single term, Bollywood, but in fact, even within what is Indian cinema, there is an enormous range.
Yeah, I like your point that just because of the very ethnic and linguistic diversity in India, that kind of leads to a certain kind of democracy, because no one can really dominate.
Yeah.
And you have different audiences, different producers of creative material, right? Or print material,
Yeah.
The preceding copyrighted program is a property of the University of California, Los Angeles. All rights reserved. It may be used freely for educational and not-for-profit activities. For other uses or to make an inquiry, please contact the Asian American Studies Center at UCLA.